Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Arpit Chaturbedi, who is the co-founder and CEO of Global Policy Insights, a centrist policy institute which works alongside governments, policymakers, and NGOs across the world. Arpit has attended Cornell University for a master's in public administration. Arpit has worked for over 7 years in this field, and in 2018 he started his own venture called Global Policy Insights. So, hi Arpit, welcome to Entrepreneur Lounge of India.
Hi, Priyaranjan. Happy to be here and so glad to be talking to you. And I really love the background that you're standing in. Looks very green and looks like you're in the heart of the nature.
Thank you. Thanks, Arpit. Arpit, I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. As Priyaranjan mentioned, I graduated from Cornell University. And basically, my story about getting into public administration is very circuitous. I was still remember in class 11th, like everybody who gets good scores in their class 10th boards. I started with a science stream in class 11th, and then I realized that 5 to 7 months down the line, I realized that that is not something that I really enjoy, and because I was more into theater, I was more into I was in the school band and things like those, and I realized that with all of these coaching and a lot of this competition, I was not really focusing on the academics part of it. Now, when I realized I was focusing on a lot of things, so I thought that this is not something that I want to do. And then I got admission into another school, which was kind enough to give me an admission in the commerce stream. Somehow did that, got into history in my undergrad as a subject. And then I realized that at Delhi University, I found sort of an academic, culture which I liked, and I really liked studying history. Graduated from there, and then I was faced with two options. One was to join a master's in history program at Jawaharlal Nehru University, or to go for an MBA. And after talking with a lot of people, I realized that MBA is probably the thing that I would want to go for, because I was also hoping in the longer run to start a business of my own. And I realized that in India, one of the things that we have in terms of resources is our human resources. And if I learn more about human resource management, then that's the kind of thing that would really help me get an advantage in a country like India. So I went for an MBA in human resource management. Then, as the regular trajectory goes, I started working with a consulting firm, and it was a good experience. I learned a lot over there, but then within a year, I kind of got bored, and that was my first, attempt at thinking about entrepreneurship. And during the time, I had designed this whole educational consulting firm. It never got off board, but then it was the first time when I thought that, okay, I did the P&L calculations or the projections. Then I came up with a nice business plan. I got the people who would be delivering some of the coaching sessions that I had planned for ready. Everything was quite set, but around that time, something happened, and that was that my father was declared as an MP candidate from the Indian National Congress for the 2014 election. So he got the party ticket, and I thought, this is exciting. This is something new, and this is something that my family also needs me for. So I came back to Firozabad. I started helping out my father for his election campaign. And, that was probably the time when I worked most passionately in my life. We could not win the campaign. We could not win the election, but I sort of found that, okay, this is my passion. This is what I want to do in life. And I was still not completely sure as to what I want to do, but then I realized that something wherein the line of sight of the impact of my work is much clearer. So that's why I started, looking for internships, looking for jobs, etc. And I landed an apprenticeship at the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, where I worked for a year. Then things started happening. I started meeting people, and they were interested in writing stuff. So I met somebody at the National Foundation for Communal Harmony, and they were editing a whole volume of essays written by IAS officers, and I helped them edit it. I started writing reports for the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, learned a lot during that time, and then got picked up to work with a member of parliament, Ms. K. Kavita, who was a member of parliament from Nizamabad in Telangana. It was a new party. So enjoyed working with her for a year, and then went for my master's in public administration at Cornell. So this is, from science to commerce to history to MBA to consulting, I got into public administration. Now, then what happened was that after my MPA degree, again, I started thinking about entrepreneurship, and I thought, there is a huge need for young people to come together in public policy and for understanding what public policy is all about. And to do that, not only for the Western countries, but to do that for developing countries in partnership with other countries. So you'd find people who would want to either work only on issues which are related to the West or the developed world, or they would find and work on issues which are completely, related to the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries without any relation to the developed world. And what we thought was that, we can be a bridge. And I got people who had worked with earlier. I got a lot of well-wishers who started connecting with me. And then we conceptualized this thing called Global Policy Insights, which would be a think tank which can work on long-term issues in public policy. And in these long-term issues, we realized that, we can actually have offices in London, in New York, in India, and work with a dispersed set of people who all come together for a particular purpose. So that's how we founded GPI. And one of our key projects that we are working on over here is a fellowship called the Global Policy Diplomacy and Sustainability Fellowship. And that's basically the, coming together of the vision, where we are getting people from all across the world to mentor the youth in public policy, to mentor, even mid-career professionals in public policy, to eventually find their career paths and make a difference in public policy on the ground. So that's broadly my story.
Right. I think you have briefly told us what is the Global Policy Insights doing. To me, it looks like a education program for people who want to get into policy and politics as well. Apart from that, what else is the function of the company you have started,
Sure.
Global Policy Insights?
Sure. So as I said, at Global Policy Insights, our fundamental mission is to provide strategies for developing countries. And fundamentally, we started working on the trade conflict between China and the USA. And we started exploring what impacts will such a trade conflict have on a country like India. And when we started thinking about it in terms of India, we also realized that there are other similar developing countries who would be impacted in a similar fashion. So we got all of them together. And what we realized was that developing countries, especially India, they have a high risk or a high benefit sort of a game. So either they could make it really big in this great power conflict, just like the United States did before the First World War, either India could, develop its capabilities, make its money during this time, or it could really, be squashed between these great powers and destroy the limited capabilities it has. So we started working on strategies, and we started getting, thought leaders, members of parliaments from different countries, uh, other policymakers, bureaucrats together to start thinking about these things. And what we realized is that, you can come up with the best of strategies, but then if you don't have good governance models to implement those strategies, then you're not really going to be able to do anything with a piece of paper, right? So then we started developing, and we started working on things like civil service reform. We started working on things like decentralization and governance. So we got a lot of people, scholars, PhD students, current bureaucrats to write and to discuss these issues on our platform. So if you go to globalpolicyinsights.org, you'd see podcasts, you'd see research articles, you'd see opinion editorials written by bureaucrats, members of parliaments from across the world, written by PhD scholars, and many different people trying to first create a repository of things and to create a uniform but contextualized mental model that, okay, how do we change governance systems? So we started researching on those things. And then we started thinking that, okay, we are doing all of this for long-term sustainability of some of these countries, for not only sustainability, but for growth. So we started partnering also with private sector organizations, where we started, we did a project, for example, for an automotive, one of the largest automobile firms in India, wherein we gave them a report on the future of skill development in India. So we realized that, these sustainable development issues are really important, and that's eventually the North Star for whatever effort that we're doing. So we started doing some of these consulting type of projects with organizations on various issues such as artificial intelligence and sustainability in job creation, things like those. So now we have artificial intelligence as another focus area that we work on. And broadly, if you ask me what we do, it is, conducting conferences, getting these research papers and opinion editorials or policy analysis written, and doing these training programs for younger or mid-career professionals like GPOTS that I just told you about.
Right. So Arpit, you are an entrepreneur. Also, you have a background in politics. Your family, you belong to a political family. So here is my question to you. Politics and entrepreneurship is not very different. I would say both of them require a lot of energy and hustling. So where do you see the synergy between entrepreneurship and politics? Can politicians be called as entrepreneurs and vice versa? And what is the difference between a politician and an entrepreneur?
Sure. I mean, see, in public policy, we have this term called policy entrepreneurs as well. And what I see is entrepreneur is a sector agnostic term. Entrepreneurship is more about having a mindset to start something new and to first an idea of something new that needs to be done. And that idea could be in terms of a product or a service or a new public policy. So first you identify a gap that, okay, this is something that nobody is working on, and this is something that I want to work on. And the second bit is then getting the resources together and having that perseverance to get people and resources behind that particular issue and address and solve that issue. So entrepreneurship could be in any field. It could be in terms of research and education. It could be in terms of politics. It could be in terms of a business. can come with various forms. So I'll give you an example of policy entrepreneurship as well. So for example, what we found as a gap is that in India, there is no solid policy for the senior citizens, right? And what we are not seeing is that 30 years down the line, 1/5 of our country would be composed of senior citizens. 20% of our population would be 65 and above. So we are pushing an agenda, and that's why, you know, these fellowships like GPOTS that I talked about, we and other research that we are doing is to create and think about newer public policies that would support the senior citizens, and also to create professionals who would be knowledgeable and driven to work for the benefit of senior citizens. You know, right now we have a Ministry of Youth Affairs, but you don't have a ministry for elderly in India, right? In fact, it's the Ministry of Social Justice that takes care of the elderly. So our idea is to then start advocating with the government to set up a ministry for the elderly in the longer run, because you don't want to set it up 30 years down the line when you already have that problem on your head. You want to set it up right now so that you can build that muscle and develop capabilities in the next 30 years. So that's policy entrepreneurship. Now, the same problem can be identified by a business person, and the business person can say that, okay, 20% of the population would be senior citizens by 2050. I can create certain products. I can, develop different forms of cars or different forms of transportation mechanisms. I can help municipalities rethink the way that they organize urban design. I can help take help of the Internet of Things, and I can take help of good urban infrastructure design technologies to help create products and services for the senior citizens. So same problem can have a policy entrepreneurship approach, and the same problem can be addressed in a business entrepreneurship approach, and both are necessary.
Right. So you do agree that politicians are entrepreneurs, can be called as entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would even include academicians in it. So academicians, politicians, and business people, all of them can be called entrepreneurs in their own right.
Right. So Arpit, now we will get into the personal side of being an entrepreneur. So would like to know, when did you think of becoming an entrepreneur? I think you have already addressed this. But it was which year did you think of doing this, and to build this particular thing, did you have the financial runway?
Sure. So as I told you, my first attempt, which was a failed attempt, was in 2014, where I designed everything, but then I got drifted into other things. So for the first time, it didn't work out. The second time again was in late 2018. That is after I had graduated, after I had done my thesis, and I was then thinking that, okay, this is the time when I can really start. I did not have the finances to do it myself. On the other hand, I had a student loan that I had to service every month. Okay. But some of the organizations, some of the people that I had worked with earlier, they helped me a lot in terms of getting resources together. They helped me set up my website. I think it was a lot more relationship oriented. And then, here and there, when we got consulting projects for almost an year, until very recently, I was also, working at the Indian School of Public Policy. I was teaching there. I was also teaching at the San Francisco State University right before that. And, whatever I'd earned from, that sort of a teaching job would be utilized in expanding this sort of an initiative that I'd started. So I think it is some of my effort, but then a lot of it is, a network effect. A lot of it is the kind of people that I was, working with, or I had worked with earlier, or I'd built relationships with, I got a lot of things done without spending the money that would have otherwise costed me a lot.
So how were your initial days? What was the first thing? How was the first month like? What were the things you did in the first month?
So I think the first month was really about setting up the website because it was something which was uh, truly global. Even our team that was working on it was in and is still in different countries. So while other entrepreneurs would think about setting up a proper office space, or they would think about building other hard infrastructure. From day one, we were working on Google Hangouts or Zoom or things like those. So and we were working across timelines. So that way, we were all set in our cyber presence. Our office was the internet really. All we wanted was a really high quality website, and all we wanted were people who would write high quality articles and do high quality podcasts with us. So getting the website ready was probably the first infrastructure that we had to invest on. And somebody that I had worked with earlier, they had a website developer in-house who had agreed to build a website for us. So we got this person together, and we built this website over, I think, 2 to 3 months. It took us a lot of time because it needed a lot of detail. And that was really the first thing that we got on to doing, apart from contacting people. In fact, the first person to write an article for us was a member of parliament from the United Kingdom. The second or third person was again Ms. K. Kavita, who I had worked with and who had supported me a lot during the vision of setting up a think tank. Getting these articles ready and getting the website ready was really the first thing that we were working
on. Now, my question is, how did you find your co-founders and how did you recruit your team when you started?
Sure. So the way I found my co-founder is also an interesting thing. So as I told you, I was working for this member of parliament, Ms. K. Kavita, earlier. And when I was in Cornell, somebody from London came to meet her, and he had some ideas around, doing an event in London and, doing an event with some members of parliament in London. And I was studying at Cornell, and she connected me to him, and she was like, it seems like a nice guy, just speak to him and figure out, what he's up to and what we can do with him, etc., etc. And he and I got talking, and then we really got, close in terms of the things that we used to think about and our broad vision. And I realized that, if I want to set up a truly global think tank, then I need people who are there in different parts of the world. So I got him on board with me together. He really liked the idea. And so that's how we started, building this out together. Now, in terms of, for example, setting up in the US, again, through the similar sort of networks, we found somebody who believed in the idea, and they were able to set it up in the US. And then we started getting more people. Initially, the kind of people that we got, and that's also an interesting story, we were organizing a conference in Hyderabad. And this was this really large conference that we were organizing, where we got approximately 550 people from 110 countries. And for this conference, we recruited a team, and obviously we had been given funding to implement this conference, and we recruited a team wherein we had a social media person. We wanted to recruit program managers, and when doing that, what we simply did was we started, in fact, that was just me at that point of time. I started posting on various groups. And then somebody who was working for the UN Global Compact they contacted me and they said that they have this intern who's working very well over there, so he may be interested in working with us. Conducted those interviews, got the team on board, and from the conference itself, we organized that conference, and that was a huge success. And then we more or less retained the same team, and those are, one of the founding team members who are still with us right now in the think tank. So yeah, that's how we function.
What is your vision, Arpit? What do you want to build in the long term?
Sure. I mean, I will tell you what is my vision for Global Policy Insights, because my personal vision is obviously a lot bigger for the country and for generally people across the world. But for Global Policy Insights, my vision is to really have impact through research, through dialogue, and impact in the longer run, because a think tank can afford to function on a longer time horizon. See, politicians have to worry about every 5 years. Politicians have to worry about other things except for public policy.
True.
A think tank can be a very powerful tool, and unfortunately, we don't have enough of think tanks in India which can create partnerships between business, government, researchers. And we want to be that sort of an organization which can create those partnerships within India and for India across the world, where we are able to impact sustainable development through governance and through research and international political economy, and do things like, for example, play a key role in getting a ministry for the elderly set up in India. So, play a key role in building partnerships, research, etc., to build those institutions which would really help developing countries in the longer run. So that's broadly what our long-term vision is.
Right. Now, I'd like to ask you, who is your role model in terms of entrepreneurship? Who inspires you?
That's a good question. I think it's hard to say there will be one. I would say there could, yeah, there are so many of them. I mean, I can think of many names. One of them would be a professor of mine, Professor Derek Cabrera, who's also a researcher. He teaches. He also has, a startup of his own and a think tank of sorts. So I think he could be definitely counted as a role model. K. Kavita, who is a member of parliament, but also has a large NGO which does a lot of humanitarian work. I think he could be counted as one. Then, people I don't know personally, but people like Elon Musk, etc., they are doing, just the kind of energy that they seem to exude. I think I really, feed on that. So it would be a lot of things, and to an extent, even my dad, because my dad started an export business when he was around my age, and he did not even know what he'll export. So he just went to Frankfurt and Dubai and some of these places just to randomly, meet people with certain samples in his suitcase and showed it to them, started getting orders. And he was really the first exporter in glass industry in Firozabad. So I think, I used to hear his stories, and that served as a lot of inspiration to me.
Right.
That's how I think I also got that sort of an international perspective on things.
So speaking of international exposures, Arpit, you have been to US and you would have seen the startup ecosystem over there. There is Y Combinator and other incubators like 500 startups. So, but in India, there is nothing as such. Of course, there are some smaller counterparts, but not as effective. So, what do you think in long run or in future India needs to do to support the ecosystem of startups, because in the end, if India has to reach the economic level of US and China, it has to be entrepreneurs who drive the show. Drive the show. So, what would you recommend Indian policymakers to, incorporate in their policies to facilitate such changes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. See, I think you need an ecosystems approach because if you look at places such as the Silicon Valley or San Francisco or generally even other places in the US, what you see is that there is the initial entrepreneurs have been kind enough to not only help newer entrepreneurs with their money, but with a lot of advice and guidance. And now in US, if you're an entrepreneur, you almost have the knowledge of a career trajectory. You know that first you'll have to get a seed fund, then you get your Series A, Series B, Series C, and you have places like Y Combinator. You also have local governments setting up these incubation centers, and you have universities setting up those. In India as well, you have universities setting up those, but then you don't see the local governments or the state governments. Not all of them, a few states do, but not all of the state governments have really thought what should be their policies and their support for startup entrepreneurs. So we need that sort of a change in mindset, and we need these institutions, and it could be an incubator, it could be anything else, which comes together and they kind of help the budding entrepreneurs to learn from the established ones, and they also help them get the resources together. So there is almost like a career ladder or a career trajectory that that if I do X, I will be able to attain Y. And that is important. The other thing that the government should certainly do is to divert funds in this area, because as we see in India, the private sector only comes in more effectively after the government has given that initial push and then withdrawn from it. Both are necessary. If the government gives the initial push and does not withdraw from it, then that becomes a problem. Then that becomes your, typical government-led industries and PSUs, which become inefficient. So what you need is the government to set up funds and real serious funds for entrepreneurs to take advantage of, and then partnerships between governments, universities, local governments to set up these institutions together. I think we do that. If we have that sort of a partnership with these various institutions, including researchers, that's very important, because they are the ones, like in the US, if you are developing a new product, it's not as if you're developing it in your home. You partner up with the university and they help you do that. So, when we create that sort of an ecosystem in our country, I think entrepreneurs will start rising.
Right. I think that is a very nice. So we are almost up with time. I have only one question left. What is your final message to potential entrepreneurs of this country?
I think my final message to the potential entrepreneurs of this country is to look at ideas that nobody is working on. Don't jump the bandwagon, because I see that happening a lot, and not only public policy, but then since I also teach at the San Francisco State University, and I'm generally a lot in touch with the Silicon Valley ecosystem. And even in India, I know a number of entrepreneurs, and I see that there's a lot of bandwagoning that happens. That, if everyone is working towards a particular technology, then everyone starts, following that. So don't jump on the bandwagon. Think about the things that you can do best, and the things that nobody else is doing right now. And just generally stay agile. Don't invest in hard infrastructure. way early in the game. Uh, yeah, and finally, I think just have faith and if you have the right knowledge, if you have the right networks, and if you have the right product and service, then sooner than later it's going to take off. So that sort of a perseverance and the right understanding of things is very important.
Well, it was a pleasure to host you here at ELI. I think our audience would have got lifetime lessons from this video. Thanks for your time, Arpit, and our best wishes for global policy insights. And of course, your other.
Thank you, Priyaranjan. Thank you, and all the best to you as well. And I hope this is of value. Thanks.
This is certainly of value. There is no doubt about it. Viewers, you can follow Arpit and connect with him on LinkedIn by searching for Arpit Chaturvedi. You can also visit the website of Global Policy Insights by typing globalpolicyinsights.org. So whom do you want to have here at ELI for next episodes? Do let me know in comments below. We will be back before you know it. Stay tuned to Entrepreneur Launch of India.